Good news is there was an outcry, and Congress has apparently cut off funding for 1 year for this. Of course, it should be done away with. All of this has to be identified. All of this has to be identified as to the source, so that we, as consumers of information, can understand what we are being fed, force-fed.
Part of what we have happening here in Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee, this summer, all the television stations in this region are up for license renewal, which means it's the only time, in every 8 years, this is the only time there's an opportunity for citizens to have some degree of influence, in principle, on who owns and how stations are managed and content. So the public comment period runs through July 1st on this. At the same time, WDRB, the Fox affiliate here, was one of the only 2 markets along with San Diego that were identified in the New York Times report on video news releases as having issued the Karen Ryan surveys.
Karen Ryan, of course, being a reporter, used to be, I think, from ABC and PBS, who then goes to make her money making these video news releases for the government.
It becomes a public relations specialist for them instead of a news person.
Right.
Part of what we're trying to understand then is how can, on the reform side, how can we, for instance, all of the television stations in Louisville are owned outside of Louisville for the news stations. How is it possible then? Well, here we have an opportunity for the next few months to comment on this. My understanding is there's been no successful license challenge in U.S. history, perhaps one in Mississippi many years ago.
And there's a very good book written on that subject. It just came out, but I haven't finished it.
Okay. Well, so that's an example of an opportunity for people to comment. There are also citizen agreements that can be entered into. There's a clause in the FCC regulations on this that allow for citizens to literally go to the stations and say, we would like you to cover these subjects, we would like to talk to you about your management practice, etc., and enter into an agreement with them. That also has never been done in full in the United States at this point, even though the regulation has been in existence.
Oh, there's an opening here. I mean, the fact that they're all up, I mean, remember, and these licenses are important, reminder, these companies do not own the airwaves. They simply lease them. And they have a responsibility to bring out the full diversity of opinion. And not just, well, in the case of these times, beat the drums for war. How much community access do they allow? How much diversity are they bringing out? This is the moment where, it's like an election year, where the politicians have to listen. Well, these stations, have to do more than pretend to listen. They do have to respond. It is a perfect time to demand accountability.
One of the other side of this, of course, is what these folks with cameras and others are doing, which is trying to develop local, alternative, or community-based media and journalism. I'm wondering if you could address, for instance, the Independent Media Center, Downtown Community Television, where you do much of your work in New York. These are media centers where people have come together in the community to create an alternative. I'm wondering if you could describe how that process works and how communities can adopt that sort of model.
IMCs are very important indie media centers, places with very few resources but a great deal of desire to get out independent information. I mean, they blossomed at the Battle of Seattle in 1999 at the end of November and December, when 50,000 people went to the largest export city in this country, Seattle. At the time, it was home of Boeing, Microsoft, Amazon.com, and people came from all over the world because the World Trade Organization was meeting there. Before that, no one even knew what it was. This bureaucratic organization that was founded in Geneva in 1995, this sort of supranational organization where you have these bureaucrats whose names we didn't even know deciding not just trade policy, but overturning the laws of democratically elected legislatures if they said they were not trade friendly. So for example, a community might say, we're not going to do business with any company that does business with the Burmese military regime. And they would vote at the state level or at the city level. And that is truly being involved in democracy, determining foreign policy from a local level. And the corporations were losing. Companies like Unicam that was based in California, just bought up by Chevron Texaco. But At the time, allegations of slave labor and building the pipeline and everything in Burma. And so these companies weren't winning, no matter how much money they put into it. People were winning. The truth was winning out. And so when they couldn't win at that level, they would go to the World Trade Organization and they would say that these laws were barriers to trade, illegal barriers to trade. And so it didn't even matter what Democratic legislatures, I mean, little d Democratic legislatures decided. This top secret trade organization was overturning the laws of legislatures, and people had had enough. Nurses, doctors who cared about public health, farmers, environmentalists, unionists, students, all together went to Seattle. And they shut that city down. Second time martial law was declared since World War II there. It was absolutely amazing. But beyond that 50,000 people that took to the streets, you had the people who, with their pens and papers, their cameras, their tape recorders, said, we are not going to view this global uprising against corporate power through a corporate lens. We're going to take it down for ourselves. We're going to get the word out from the grassroots up. And they went to the streets, and as the mayor and the police chief were denying that rubber bullets were being used, we were picking them up by the handfuls. And soon, IndieMedia.org was getting more hits than CNN.com. Because the truth was being told there. The pictures were there. It was exposing the fact that the media was simply acting as a megaphone for the administration in Seattle. And that administration was not telling the truth. And we had the pictures to prove it. So it was an amazing moment, the real blossoming of a movement of indie media, of independent media, of IMCs, independent media centers. And it's so important that you have one here in Louisville. I thought a group of people were...
There's been a lot of discussion about that. There are people attempting to form it.
Well, all over the country, all over the world, there are indie media centers, which is ways people collaboratively get out information. I know that there are many people who are trying to bring Democracy Now! To Louisville, which would be absolutely wonderful. I mean, right now we broadcast on over 330 stations in this country, 2 to 3 new stations a week picking us up on NPR and Pacifica stations, PBS and public access TV stations across the week. We're a daily, grassroots, global, unembedded news hour. And we also broadcast on both satellite networks, on Dish Network, channel 9415, which is free speech TV, an independent channel, 9410, which is Link TV. And Link is also on Direct TV, and it's on channel 375. We broadcast several times a day on Direct TV as well. And we audio and video stream at democracynow.org. But the point of all of that is to say that it is critical that we join together all the different media outlets to build this media infrastructure.
So this raises two questions for me. First of all, a lot of what happens with people who become involved in indie media, for instance, are folks that never picked up a camera before, never wrote an article before. And in Louisville, what we are working with is what we're calling the Open Journalism Initiative, to bring people in as community journalists, get the training we need, move forward towards setting up a media center and that sort of work. How to go about ordinary folks becoming their own journalists is a real question. Not so much, it's not that hard to pick up a camera, but in many ways people are hesitant to assume that voice in that position. And this seems to me part of the value of having media centers as a way for people to get support in that. You've been a journalist for a long time. If you have any advice for people who want to become community journalists, what would it be?
To do it, not to be afraid, to understand that you are an essential part of a functioning democracy. I think of Dirk Koenig, the late great media center guru from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He just died at the age of 48. Incredible loss to us all. But he really built this community media center in Grand Rapids that was amazing. I recently went there. It's actually in the library. It's a collaboration of all sectors of the community. They have just banks of computers for people to work on and to do editing. Because now it's not like the old-fashioned way where you have these extremely expensive machines that you do film editing on. You can do it on a small computer, and you can make the kind of movies you actually see in Hollywood, but better because they're true.